Hello.
Right, thanks for joining us. So, yeah, as most of our attendees are aware, these sessions are part of the Women in Tech Mentoring Programme. We're now a 1,000 person community, so potentially lots of eyes on this video. And the reason these videos came about is because a number of our members, at different stages of their careers, really wanted to understand some of the journeys of the more senior people in the programme, understand the challenges they've been through, the opportunities they've had, and hopefully take some inspiration and some lessons from that. So I think what would be useful is, first of all, just to give people understanding of who you are, what your current job is.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you could give us a quick intro, that'd be great.
For sure, happy to help. Bilge Mert, I'm the Chief Technology and Operations Officer of iptiQ, which is an insurtech that's funded by Swiss Re. So I'm based out in London, but I lead a global team working in US in Boston, in Zurich, Amsterdam, and also in China, in Shanghai.
Wow. Okay. So it's a global role. Is most of your team in the UK, or are they in those other countries?
We are a globally diverse team, actually. I mean, I've got a small team in the UK for the European business and some of the lead architects, but most of my team is actually outside the UK in Switzerland and Netherlands. We've got a big team in Boston in the US, around 90 engineers there, and we're just about looking to launch in China this year. So we started the recruitment there and build up of the team. So I'm hoping to have by the end of the year another 50 staff there.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And then as the CTO, then what does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
I think the day-to-day basis, it's a lot about defining our strategy, working with the senior stakeholders to get them on board with some of the things that we want to be doing. I spend a lot of time in huddles and stand-ups with my team, supporting them, guiding them, looking at the deliverables. So that's a key part of my role. And I work a lot with the regional directors and in all these regions and understanding the business, the challenges that we've got there, and how we want to move forward with the next step. So it does move from having very strategic conversations to really problem solving with the teams. So being as part of a startup, I think one of the key learnings has been to really being hands-on and working with the teams and be ready for the challenges, whether it's having a very strategic conversation with a senior stakeholder or working with your engineering team to help them overcome the challenges they have on the ground.
Yeah, now obviously technology is fairly consistent across the globe, but are there challenges around dealing with different stakeholders in different countries? Do they want a different type of approach?
Yeah, I mean, we feel that I experience it every day, actually, because especially I think when you're in financial services and insurance, there's a lot of differences in regulation. Regulation drives a lot of what we do, and also how much we can differentiate. So in China, we can't differentiate so much on product and pricing, but we can do a lot in customer experience. In Europe, we've got a bit more flexibility on product and pricing, so we might choose to build in EMEA, but buy in China or buy in the US based on the product line, based on the regulatory requirements. The strategy is not a simple one. It's very much based on how much can we really differentiate and add value to our consumers in those markets, and what's the right technology approach and what's the right staffing approach we need to have to be able to meet the business needs.
Yeah, and what is the most challenging part of that job?
I'd say a lot of it. I mean, of course, technology has its challenges, you know, the timeline to getting things done. But I think most of the times it's about, I'd say at that level, people making sure that you have a strategy that you can bring on board with the strategy, from senior management down to the people who are working on the ground. I think that's the hardest part of the challenge. I always say it's the organizational aspects and how we set ourselves up to do things, not necessarily the technology. There's a lot of technology out there at the moment. There's a lot of opportunities to improve, but it's more about our approach and how we make that more fit for that business that tends to be the challenge.
Yeah. Okay. You're quite unique, I guess, in the people we've had speaking to us so far, in that you did a technical degree.
Yeah.
So what was it from an early age that inspired you to pursue a career in tech and education in tech?
For me, I mean, I used to love maths at school. So I always loved problem solving. I had quite an analytical person. And I have to say, at that time, I was encouraged a lot by family and by my teachers at the time to really pursue a career in engineering, it wasn't something that was natural to me. I wasn't sure. There's a lot of stereotypes out there about engineering and what type of career you'd get out of it. But I wanted to give it a go because I thought I really enjoyed doing maths and doing problem solving, and I want to learn more. And there's a lot of things in technology that's really open to new changes. There's more disruption happening in technology than any other industry. So that's really what drove me at the time to go into a career in tech. Yeah.
Yeah, is that fairly common in the country you're from, or were you quite unique?
No, actually, it's I was the only girl in my class. It was not very. So I have to say it wasn't the easiest as I was going through it, but for sure it is getting better at the moment. There's a lot more open doors, and there's a lot more, I think, inclusivity in women in the technology. But as I was going through it, I was the only girl in my class. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that made it more challenging, or otherwise being the only girl in the course?
I think, to be honest, it was more around the perceptions and the expectations that was a bit different. So there's always the stereotype around a technology person, a software developer. And of course, when you come in with different ideas and different approach to coming things, there's a little bit of that expectation. So I think there were those kind of challenges. And I would say when I got into my career in early days, I haven't felt a lot of that. And as you're growing, university was a bit challenging, but when I started my career, it wasn't as difficult. It's more, I think, as you go further senior up in your career, and then you realize certain things. It's not about really delivering the outcomes on the ground, but also about building those relationships and influencing. And that's when you realize being a technologist at that level as a woman is harder than maybe in other industries.
Okay. What do you think makes it harder? And then are there things you've had to do to evolve to overcome some of those?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's been lots of learnings there as well. I mean, for sure, some of the harder things is not having a lot of women in that industry and not having a good understanding of that leadership style. There's a certain way that's expected of you to lead. And I think we all need to work really hard in making people understand that there's different types of leadership and there's different types of getting things done. So a senior leader doesn't need to be a command and control driving things all the time. A leader can be a collaborative leader that's also nurturing and driving things and influencing things. And in a good team, you need to be honest, that balance, and you need everyone bringing those kind of differences. So for sure, that's that challenge, breaking into that glass and really making people see that you can lead and drive even if you have a different style of leadership. So I think that's kind of really breaking the barriers of mindset and expectations that needs to be worked through. And I actually felt that in every level I moved out from kind of middle management upwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important message. I think the old school approach is that women have to be more like men and to be like men in the boardroom, but when actually it's probably the men that need to go on that journey and realize that women bring their own strengths and weaknesses to the table, and those things complement the voices that are already around that table. No, so that's interesting. You mentioned your early career then. So obviously you did an engineering degree. What was your first role in technology?
So I was an intern and I was working in an SAP program at that time in early 2000. So I worked as a business analyst. I worked as a change management agent. I did work in service management. As an intern, I worked in many different IT roles. And as I've got kind of a bit more understanding of the product, I started implementing it and I traveled across Europe. At that time, there was a lot of pan-European SAP programs. So I worked in Germany, Spain, Norway, Switzerland, and I used to travel 4 days a week, really implementing global common solutions and tools to different clients, both in my time in Accenture and also when I was internal consultant at Mondelez. And I would say it was a great learning experience because I was able to not only develop my technical skills, but also communication skills and influencing skills. When you work with different cultures and people in different organizations, you really get to understand how you can engage with them, how you can bring them on board and get them to trust you and build that relationship for them to give you more work. So I think that has been really helpful. And I would recommend that to anyone who's starting off their career. If you have opportunities, don't keep in your comfort zone, go into different areas, learn different practices. This is the time to be really not be worried about asking stupid questions or failing. So it's an opportunity to really learn. And if you had the opportunity to travel and work in different companies and different cultures, that's also really helpful, and it comes in handy when you go further up.
Yeah, there's a perception that you need to have a technical degree to work in an IT role, or at least historically there was. Do you feel that your education was essential to the role that you ended up in as an intern, or was it just a thing that unlocked the door for you to be able to get that opportunity?
Yeah, I don't think so, to be honest. I mean, when I was in Accenture, I was running SAP boot camps, and we had new graduates coming from all disciplines. So I had graduates from history and geography degrees who did really well in consulting. So I think for sure problem solving skills, analytical skills, and communication skills are very important, but attitude and the ability to learn and being open to learning is super important as well. So I would not, so if you've started your career somewhere else, if you've actually done something else, I wouldn't be worried about getting into technology. And one of the things that's, I think, worth to talk about is not everybody needs to be a software developer in technology. So again, like we sometimes have that mindset, you can be working on business analysis, you can be working on change management, project management, strategy. There's a lot of skills, and I feel that in my day-to-day in my team, I have some very hardcore techies who are coding, but then I really normally team them up with strategists and people who can do business cases and user stories, so that you can have that diverse, successful team that can give you an outcome. If I have only technologists who are coding, it's not it's nowhere is successful in getting us to the final outcome.
Yeah, I think looking at your CV and your background, it evidences that fact that there are lots of other skills above and beyond pure technical skills. And the reason I say that is, when I first met you, you were just taking on a large customer data program.
Yeah.
You talked about starting in SAP, and you're now a CTO. So obviously, very different technical arenas that you're working in.
Yeah.
What are the other areas that you've worked in, and what would you say was the common strand that allowed you to be successful in all of those?
Yeah, I think to be honest, I was always really keen on bridging and making sure that I can bridge from technology and business to get to a commercial outcome and bringing people together. I think that has been one of the key drivers for me across the different roles I've had. And how can I bring this together, and how can I turn this into a successful program? I think the other part for me was always making sure that I learned something that's helping me develop my career and helping the company add value. So both from a personal satisfaction and also, so for example, I've done SAP for years because that was the biggest thing that was adding value to corporations. And then I moved on to data, because data is becoming, and it's becoming even more important, the new oil, and what's really becoming the blood of a lot of the organizations in making sure they can drive that value. Digital technologies, and that's really continuing to evolve because technology changes every day. I think people who are in technology, man or woman, needs to be open to be changing and going along with that too, because otherwise you can be, I mean, of course, having a specialism is important, but if you're too stuck in that specialism, you might be missing the boat in other things that can be bringing a lot more value.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing. Obviously, with the evolution of tech and how fast it moves, you've got to stay on your toes. How have you managed to do that then? So obviously, when you've got a day job and you've got a job spec and you've got 9 to 5, the day's completely full of meetings and things, how do you find the time to get visibility on other skills and understand
Yeah,
what the next
I
areas
think
are?
it's always important to try to carve out some time for learning. And that's not only for technology, I think it's any role that you do, to make sure that you've got some time to know what's happening in the market, what's happening with the jobs, what's happening with the trends. So, I mean, even I think you don't have access to Gartner, there's a lot of information out there, and then you can really start seeing where are the things. And the other thing I would really look at is when you're an organization, really working both with your line manager, managing your own career to say, look, I've been in this role for a couple of years, I'm coming to my comfort zone. How can I learn something that's going to be important for the company, and it's also going to give me some good skills? What can I take from my current job and knowledge, but then supplement it with learning something new and add more value and evolve my career? So I think it's just proactively managing your own career, being open and carving out that time to grow, networking, meeting other people where you can, who has a good understanding of some of the technologies and things that are shaping up the market. I think these are all important things.
Yeah, thinking about the mentoring program, one of the challenges that our members have is identifying the areas that they need to develop to be successful. And they quite often think about their current job and their job spec, and they come up with technical things they want to develop. But obviously, looking at your career, you've gone, like we say, from SAP to data to now this overall CTO role. So obviously, the technical skills that you need change over time. So what would you say are those non-technical skills that have absolutely underpinned your career to date that you would advise someone to invest their time in developing?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for sure, leadership skills are important, and that doesn't need to be leadership upwards management. It can be leadership with your peers and or inspiring your team. So I think building that leadership and communication skills are super important, because in any organization you work, you need to be able to influence. And that's, I would say, one of the things that I have had to learn, especially coming in as a junior person. How do I really influence people? How do I really get to present myself and my ideas and get buy-in for them? I think in any sector, but even more so in technology where we don't have a lot of women, I think it's really important to work on and build those skills for anyone as a basic. And as you go another level up, you need to increase the a bit more, because you tend to have harder stakeholders, you tend to have more difficult conversations. But it's always about, I think, having that as a baseline skill.
Yeah, and did you talk about leadership skills there? Did you always have one eye on the future role being a leadership role, or is it just the natural evolution of your career?
It's moved, to be honest. Always, I've always had a role that's 2 steps ahead, and then I pivoted. So I don't think I've ever kind of started off, when I started my career, I want to be a CIO or a CTO one day. But I very much looked at what am I good at, what I enjoy doing, and where I can add value. And then when I was there, I started thinking about what's the kind of next few years, where can I be 2 levels up from this? And then it's moved on. And it's just, it can be different people. Some people are very clear on what they want, but I find, especially in these days, things change so much. Like, I think thinking like 15 years ahead is quite difficult. So I think putting yourself in a position and then thinking about how you can progress and pivoting from that is a good approach that I would recommend.
Yeah, and a common theme in these conversations is that around that of mentoring and sponsorship and coaching. So what part of other people played in your development?
A massive part, massive part. I have to say, like when I first took my first role, I had 2 ladies in my first job in Mondelez who have given me the chances and opportunities, moving me from my service desk role to say, if you can learn finance modules in SAP, then we can help you get into a project where you can do that. They could see the potential in me, but I didn't necessarily have the skills at the time. So I think almost like having those sponsors, mentors, allies have been hugely important. And that has been, that was an example from my first job, but that has been throughout my career. I met people who were either allies who helped open doors for me and open opportunities, or mentors who helped me address some of the gaps in development areas that I had, or role models that made me think, okay, great, I would like to be a CIO like her because she's amazing and she's different from what I would have expected from a CIO and how that person is. So I think that's been hugely important. And I would not be in the same place, I would not be thinking this way if I haven't had the opportunity to meet with those people.
Yeah, and did they offer themselves to you, or did you have to go out of your way to say, help, and I need some support?
Yeah, it's a bit of both, to be honest. I honestly think that you've got to take your accountability of your career and think about where, and then there might be some areas where you don't have those opportunities, and maybe that's not the right place for you. If you don't have a sponsor and if you can't really get those relationships to build, I think that's really important. But I think forums like this is important too, because this is a good opportunity to network with people, meet people, learn from people. I'm happy to see there's more of that. I mean, in my past, I was in the organization nominated for mentoring programs. I had a mentor in the organization, but I would suggest to everybody, check if there is a formal mentoring program in the company who is not your direct line manager, but who can give you an insight on the company. If not, look for external opportunities, like read, like what's out there, and think about how you can learn from outside perspective. So you're not only thinking about your immediate job, but you're thinking a bit wider on what's happening there and how people can help you. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned when your first role in tech, there was, you're one of a few women, and I imagine over time that's hopefully improved a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think, people in your role, but also all levels of the business, can be doing to encourage support and get more women into tech?
Yeah, I think I always look at it into, I mean, almost 3 angles. One of them is for sure when we bring in new hires, recruitment and recruiting diverse profiles, and not only women, but across having that diversity in the team is super important for that team to succeed. So I think that is one part. I would say I make a conscious effort on that. And when we talk with the leadership team, we make an overall leadership team and iptiQ make a conscious effort in recruitment. The other part is really looking at the current pipeline and looking at transfers and upskilling or from other departments. So when I see someone who's a great operational analyst, I always ask, do you want to be a project manager in one of my projects? And they would say, but I'm not an IT person. You don't need to be an IT person. You need to be a good project manager. So I think having that opportunities, but I think we need to almost proactively find those people with that potential and rope them into technology and show them that actually there's a good potential here. For you to be making a good career and have success. And then the third bit for me, what I'm really passionate about is building that pipeline and really start from people going into universities, people going into technology subjects, and really trying to inspire. I work with some of the schools to try to, in their career days, to give them an idea of what technology career could be. And I think that's really important too, because if you don't have a good pipeline, a solid pipeline to work with, we are all targeting the same people, and it's really difficult to find that talent.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I've got to say thank you for sharing the positive parts of your journey. Obviously, it's really inspiring, and I think it'll help a lot of our members understand the opportunity is available to them. We do get a lot of questions about some of the more negative aspects to it, challenges that people have faced. How do people motivate themselves? Because they're not always 100%, and dealing with things like imposter syndrome. So looking at those kind of areas, what would you say are the challenges that you've faced to get to where you are now, and probably with a slight lens on the fact that you are female? How do you think that's played a bigger part?
I think the imposter syndrome is a real thing. And I think, to be honest, building that confidence in women is a real thing, because especially I think when I felt, not in my junior roles, because it was all about delivery and outcomes. You're working on a coding project or you're delivering something, but then as you go further up, it becomes more about influencing and getting the buy-in. And that's when you start questioning yourself, do I have the right experience for this? And what I found in my experience with women is, like, there's women who tend to be really right and know the stuff before we communicate versus I think maybe others. So I mean, that's one of the things I've learned, and I'll continue to learn as well. And I would recommend is just having belief in yourself and work on building that confidence, and knowing that you can take on those leadership roles and you can start influencing and have belief in yourself without necessarily be 100% correct in all the time. It's 100% knowing all the detail, and also starting to delegate more and leveraging, not through doing, because I think I mean, especially I've had that tendency to show my success through delivering a lot of outcomes and a lot of doing, but sometimes it's not so much about doing, but orchestrating as well and having the right connection. So that's what I would really say is a big jump for what I've seen in my career and some of the ladies that I coach and mentor as well, that how do you move from doing to leading? How do you do that kind of step in terms of building that personal brand gravitas with the senior leadership team, and how do you start delegating and start orchestrating things? So
yeah, you mentioned personal brand there. So what would your top tips be for people who are looking to get more spotlight on themselves in their business? How should they go about building that personal brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think you always need to be true to yourself. That's very important, because you can't, I think, when you look at your leadership team and you say, I want to be there, you can't really mold yourself too much. You've got to be who you are. But I think what you need to be aware is what are the kind of communication styles that are required to be effective in that environment, and really try to build that brand and build that, whether it's about building the trust or integrity, whatever you feel strongly about, or delivery. I think that needs to come through in your brand. And that also needs to be slightly, adjusted when you have in different environments, so that you can influence that audience in the right way. But what's super important is being really authentic and not looking at a senior leader who's been in that position for 20 years and trying to emulate that person so that you can get the buy-in. I think those behaviors have happened, but I think they're dated now, and we can start doing it in a different way.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I guess one final question from me, and then I'll ask the audience now if they've got any questions to put them in the chat. But you've given some great advice throughout the piece. But are there anything we've not discussed that you think is really important that you will want other women coming through the ranks to understand, and any advice that you'd give them?
Yeah, I think the two things is, one, I've mentioned before, is just having that confidence and self-belief is important, that can-do attitude, and not being fearful of failing. If it doesn't work, you do something else. And I think the second piece is continuous learning. Don't put yourself in a box that I'm an expert or an architect and this, and being really open and flexible to change based on where the market is going and what are the things happening. And that's, I think, both very important aspects.
Yeah, because I know you've done some coaching. I'm going to push on one of those areas. So you mentioned self-confidence a lot of times.
Yeah.
We all have our bad days. So
Yeah.
are there any techniques that you tell the people you're coaching of how to, energize themselves and get over those days where they're not feeling motivated and the self-confidence they could be?
Yeah, I think like sometimes you need to go to the root cause of it, So it might be that people talk a lot in detail because they want to prove that they know their stuff. So you need to understand what it is that's causing it and address it really at the heart. It might be we're being worried about conflict management. So I think it's just being open with yourself and really open to development and change without criticizing yourself. So I think we all can be, men or women, a bit sometimes too self-critical, but really understanding what are the things that are making you struggle in that environment and what can you do to proactively address it. Get support from your line manager. Hopefully the line manager would be that kind of doing that coaching. I always do that with my team, but that will be important. And if it's not working in that route, find external coaches to help develop that. Whether it's around presentation or elevating your pitch, whatever that is, that's kind of causing that challenge. I think it's good to acknowledge it, not being afraid of it, and working to build on those skills.
Great. No, lovely. Thank you, Bilge, for the time today. There's lots of consistent messaging in there with the other guests that we've had around, taking control of your own career, not being afraid to ask questions and make mistakes. That's why we all learn. But I think most importantly, it's having that self-confidence and not trying to be something that you're not. I absolutely think, be true to yourself, realize the value in your own strengths, and help and influence other people around you to see that as well. So no, really great. We don't have any other questions in the chat, so I'm going to let you go off and enjoy the rest of this pleasant evening, hopefully.
Thank you very much, and have a nice afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your time. Catch you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.